Well, I actually did a paleo challenge with Sarah, and I realized once I read the rules, I was like, oh, this is just fine dining without risotto. You have to get the best ingredients from
Hmm.
the best sources in season. You can cook with animal fat. Like it's, I was like, oh, and it instantly like reignited my passion for cooking. I was making every meal for his breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Hmm.
And I, my personal journey has been over the past, 5 years. I lost like 65 pounds.
Wow. I believe every person has a right to basic knowledge of how to optimize their mind, body, and spirit. Here, I bring to you influential individuals and ideas to help you live a more healthy, fulfilling life. I'm Julie Fouché, and I'd like to welcome you to Pursuing Health. Welcome back to Pursuing Health. This is episode number 32. And on this episode, I sit down with Pete Servold. He is the owner of the paleo meal delivery company, Pete's Paleo. And I've been using Pete's Paleo meals for about the past 6 months now while I've been going through my clinical rotations in medical school. And I have been blown away by their quality and convenience, but even more so, I've been blown away by Pete's personal story, as well as his commitment to empowering people to eat local, real, fresh, and delicious food on a regular basis. So a little bit about Pete before we get started. He has extensive culinary training and experience. He attended Le Cordon Bleu in Atlanta, Georgia, and worked at Restaurant Eugene, where he really experienced the true meaning of farm to table and fine dining. It wasn't until the restaurant industry started to take its toll on Pete's health that he decided to join his local CrossFit affiliate, and it was there that he found paleo while participating in a 30-day challenge. It wasn't long after that Pete's Paleo was born, and I'm excited to sit down and talk to Pete a little bit about his background, as well as some of the principles that Pete's Paleo lives by, some advice for getting the most out of your local CSA, and of course, we'll have to talk about bacon as well. So before we get started, I have a few quick reminders. First of all, if you're enjoying the podcast, please head over to iTunes where you can subscribe and consider giving it a 5-star rating. You can also head to my website, juliefouché.com. There you can enter your email to stay in the loop with the podcast and everything else that I'm doing with my bi-weekly newsletter. And I'm also always looking for inspiring stories to share. So if you or someone you know has used lifestyle to overcome a serious health challenge, send your story to me at info@juliefouché.com, and I'll select some to share here on future episodes. If you're interested in training with me, check out my program through Beyond the Whiteboard. This is the actual training that I do now 5 days per week, an hour per day, and it's scheduled out for you minute by minute from warm up to cool down. For more information or to try it out yourself, visit beyondthewhiteboard.com/juliefouché. Also important this week, Pete's Paleo is doing a giveaway contest, so make sure you check back onto my website as well as my social media accounts for all the details. And with that, let's get started here with episode number 32 of Pursuing Health featuring Pete Servold. Welcome back to Pursuing Health. I'm here with Pete Servold of Pete's Paleo, and we are going to get into all kinds of details about paleo today, but I wanted to first start off by just welcoming you onto the podcast and then seeing if maybe you could start by talking about your background growing up as far as food and exercise goes.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here. I grew up moving around a lot because my dad worked for McDonald's for 35 years. So that is where my original background in food came from, not what you'd expect. But I had a very typical, I think, 80s, 90s childhood. Lots of fruit by the foot and Gushers. The Kool-Aid squeezies and Capri Suns and Lunchables and all that stuff that we thought was food.
Oh, you're bringing back so many memories right now.
right? Like that's just,
Yeah.
and we think back and it's like, no wonder I had, a cold every 2 months. And no wonder, when we got the flu, everyone was sick. Um, but at the same time, my parents made time to coach most of our sports teams. I played, baseball in the spring and summer and football in the fall and, golf and a pickup game with all the kids in the neighborhood pretty much every day. I grew up, running around outside. And so for the most part was relatively healthy, even though I was not, eating, I would say, the best meals during the day. And then my folks always made a point, especially because of how busy they were, that we always had dinner together.
Okay.
And even if it was, it might have been shake and bake pork chops and rice roni, but there was a starch, a veg, a meat, and a salad. And that was definitely where I started to form the ideas that, like, sitting down together and the community of food and all of that stuff is almost as important as what you're eating. And my biggest food influence was definitely my grandmother, my mom's mom. When I was like 7, we made an apple pie from scratch together.
Oh,
and I got to sift the flour and I peeled all the apples and like my hand was like hurting so bad at the end. And she's like, "Let me help you, Peta." She has this great Maine accent. And I said, "No, I can do it. I'm going to do it." And I'll never forget, you start with all these raw ingredients and then you open the oven and there's a dang pie in there. It's like, I did that. And I still like, that's what I love about food, that you just take it and you make it yours and you start, and it's a lot of work. And sometimes your hand ends up, all crooked or cut or whatever, or burnt, but it's awesome. And then when I was, middle school, high school, I still really wanted to be in food and be a chef. And I remember I would run home after school, and Great Chefs of the World was this show that was on the Discovery Channel.
Okay.
And it was always some French chef, and the woman there would be a narrator that was interpreting everything that he said. And it was this like super old school, high end, like they would do an appetizer, a main, and a dessert. And there would be 2 episodes back to back. And I was just obviously a very nerdy kid because I would run home and watch that. And then Bill Nye the Science Guy was on afterwards. I was a happy kid. But I think like most people, you kind of get into college and kind of not really sure what you want to do with yourself. I knew that like I liked food. But I was like, man, chefs don't make that much money and they work really hard. And I don't know if that's, kind of what I want to do with my life. So I tried to go to school for business, and I had a lot of fun, but I didn't do very well in school. And I also picked up a lot of bad habits of just eating really poorly. And I started working in restaurants, bartending and serving, and really developed a really crappy lifestyle. It's pretty typical for that industry.
Okay.
You work from, if you work a night shift, you're working from 3 or 4 in the afternoon till 1 or 2 in the morning. And, you get off and everyone that and love is asleep at home like normal people.
Right.
And you're up with all of these crazy people, and you have cash in your pocket, and you're like, yeah, we should go out drinking. It's 2. What else are you going to do, And that kind of becomes your life, very quickly. And basically until I was 25, I did that. And in that process, put on a good amount of weight. I was, I'm only 5'10", and I got up to about 215.
Okay.
And none of it was muscle. It was mostly bourbon and chicken wings, I think, probably what it was mostly made up of.
And you weren't really working out much at this point, or were you still?
Yeah, no, I basically, as soon as I left high school, like even in high school, I was going to the gym. There was like a Lifetime Fitness down the street from where I worked. I would go there. And like the second that I got out on my own, I like quickly like just went into immature 19-year-old boy, continuing to think that you can just eat whatever you want and do whatever you want, and like you're still going to be, because I was a rail my whole life. I was very skinny. I was always looked healthy, and I kind of thought it would always be that way. I don't know,
Right.
And then you're like 25 and you're like, oh, this isn't what I had in mind. But I got really lucky and I met my wife. And, at this point I had gone to culinary school and become like a pretty decent chef. I had worked at some really good restaurants. And when we met, I was just running like a catering place and way overweight and not living a good lifestyle. And she's like, you're too talented to waste your life doing this, And I was like, sure, yeah, okay. And I think we had been dating for about 3 weeks. And I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I had like 104-degree fever. And every time my heart beat, it felt like someone was stabbing me in the chest.
Oh, no.
And it's funny, we've only been dating for a few weeks and I was just like, I gotta go. She's like, you seem like something's really wrong. I was like, I just need some Gatorade and some Tylenol. I gotta go. And like any grown man whose mother is in town on business, I ran to my mom.
Of course.
I was like, where are you? She's like, I'm at the hotel. I was like, I need help. And it was nuts because it was pretty clear I needed to go to the emergency room. But, I was a service industry person, so I didn't have health insurance.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, can we sign up for health insurance online real quick and then go to the doctor? This was before you could, this was 6 years ago now, 7 years ago. So it was before insurance companies could deny you for pre-existing condition.
Okay.
And I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to get insurance afterwards. And like this entire time, like literally every heartbeat is like, I'm like someone's just punching me right in the heart.
Oh gosh.
So go to the doctor, they do a bunch of tests and it's pericarditis.
Okay.
Which I'm sure you know what that is. And you could probably describe it better than I do. But essentially they said the sac around your heart that's meant to make it beat easily had become inflamed and was actually squeezing my heart shut. And then they really scared me because there's a lot of things that can cause it that, basically any type of infection can cause that.
Right.
So then they had to take a bunch of blood and they ran, a bunch of tests and everything came back negative. And then they started talking about my lifestyle and they're like, well, what's your life like? What kind of health, what's your health regimen like? And I was like, it's not, and basically I had chronic heartburn so bad from just stress and eating horribly that my esophagus had become so inflamed that it had rubbed up against it for so long that it became swollen on itself.
Okay.
And so I was 26 and I was like,
it's your wake up call.
I was like, I have a heart problem and I'm 26 years old. Like, and I did it to myself. Like that's, you either wake up and change or, you don't really want to be around. And so I immediately started, going to CrossFit a lot. And we did like a 30-day paleo challenge.
Okay.
And as a chef, I always, you hear like a diet and you're instantly like, that's not food. That's not
right.
We should be able to cook whatever we want as long as it's from the farm and blah, blah, blah. Well, I actually did a paleo challenge with Sarah and I realized once I read the rules, I was like, oh, this is just fine dining without risotto. You have to get the best ingredients from the best sources in season. You can cook with animal fat. Like I was like, oh, and it instantly like reignited my passion for cooking. I was making every meal for his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And my personal journey has been over the past, 5 years. I lost like 65 pounds.
Wow.
I was, before my daughter was born, now I've got like a little bit of a dad bod again, but still eating pretty good. But I went
understandable.
I was training like 5 or 6 days a week, going to the chiropractor and the acupuncturist. Like I was like one of those people that was like that into it. And,
right.
But when we did our first paleo challenge, when I was all excited and having all that fun, everyone else in the gym was eating like grilled chicken and steamed broccoli.
Right.
And they're like, could you make more of what you're making and bring it? And like, obviously, like the light bulb went off in my head. My biggest problem with working in the restaurants is that you work so hard, you have these crazy hours, and you don't really make that much money.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the places that serve the best food, it's $40 a plate.
Right.
Like, how many people can afford that? Who is that really helping?
Right.
And so I came up with the model of Pete's Paleo where, we take the meals, we take all the orders ahead of time so that we know exactly how much food to order so there's no waste. We do production during the day. Everybody has a normal schedule. We pay everybody a living wage from the beginning. We have health insurance and 401k. And like you said, thank you for saying that. The food's good. It tastes like really good food. And that was definitely my goal from the beginning, was like, there's got to be a way to do food good, like make a living, not give yourself pericarditis from stress and lifestyle, and still serve food that, you can be really proud of. And so that's kind of how it all started.
And this all started, how long ago was it that you did this challenge for the first time?
5 years ago.
So in 5 years, you've grown a lot now to be across the entire United States, shipping nationally. But what were some of the principles? I know you talk a lot about having local food and not wasting anything and sort of being sustainable. But what are some of the principles that drive the decisions that you make for your company?
I think one of the biggest ones from the beginning was, realizing a lot of the problems with people's health and a lot of problems with our food system is that we grew up on Gushers and Lunchables and Capri Suns and not like a ton of like food, like real food. And so as adults, we kind of eat like 11-year-olds, and it's like, I only like this. I only like chicken breast and I can't see the bone. And I like cauliflower, but I don't like broccoli. And chances are you really just haven't had it or had it done well.
Right.
So from the beginning, we said, if you order from us, like we allow like a few exceptions, like no game or no pork, because some people just can't handle game meat, which I understand. And some people for various reasons don't want to eat pork. And, but other than that, you eat what we make, and we make what's available.
Reminds me of my mom at the dinner table. This is what's for dinner.
This is what's for dinner. Yeah, I remember staring at a thing of Brussels sprouts when I was like 6 years old for like 40 minutes, and it was like, who was going to break first?
Right.
My parents were like in the living room watching 90210 or something. They're like, you can sit there as long as you want. You're eating those Brussels sprouts. And my mom is a very good cook now. Both my brother and I went to culinary school, and we've given her a lot of tips and tricks, but she'll be the first to admit that those Brussels sprouts and her pork chops were not something that were going to make you really love those things.
Okay.
And I think that's, another thing is that a big reason why I knew this would work is kind of with this wave of foodies and actually good restaurants and stuff. People are starting to eat more things, and they're starting to eat sweetbread and liver and, beef tongue tacos and things that they wouldn't normally know to eat. But at the same time, nobody has the time. I mean, look at your schedule. Like, when and there are you going to go to culinary class?
Right.
And learn to make like the perfect broth and learn to make the perfect braise and, your own spice blend and things like that. Like, we in like 2 generations basically all forgot how to cook, when that used to be something, my grandpa was just as good of a cook as my grandma. And like that in like 2 generations is just gone.
Right.
Where most people can't cook.
I remember some of my best memories with my grandmother were cooking. She was always cooking everything from scratch. When she grew up, her family owned a grocery store, and she knew how to like go to the market and pick the best cuts of meat and all this stuff. And even my parents, we always cooked dinner at night, or my parents always had dinner for us. But it's it's still very different from cooking everything from scratch, and like it's a whole day production to be cooking lunch and dinner for your family with that kind of quality, I think.
And it's something that we like recognized and we kind of wanted to solve. And then the other thing that for me, I worked at restaurants in Atlanta where we won James Beard, best chef of the South. We won best cuisine from Bon Appetit. Like I had to do prep production for food that was used on the cover of the magazine for Bon Appetit. And it's like, so that's where my career was headed before I kind of got burnt out on the hours and everything. So when I started this company, I was like, man, the only way I'm going to be able to look my chef friends in the face is if this food is good.
Yeah.
I get that it's popular and that it's convenient and that people want to eat this way now, and so that we could be successful even if it was just okay.
Right.
But I got to be able to look those guys in the face, and still get a handshake from them and not be some infomercial guy is kind of how I thought of it. And so, sticking to the principles of farm to table and making everything from scratch. We don't buy anything. If you go to our kitchen in San Diego, all the spice rubs are handmade. There's a ton of like chilies, dried chilies in the freezer. Make our own pepper blends. Like everything's made from scratch. We take the fat that's saved from trimming the animals and render it, and then that's what we cook the vegetables in. So if you get a roasted pork loin, we're cooking the broccoli and onion saute that comes with that in the pork fat. And that for me was what I learned in that really great restaurant, because you want to wrap everything in the flavor of what you're eating and what you're cooking. Makes it more unctuous and, good stock, which everyone in our world calls bone broth now, but it was just stock to me then. If you do it right, it's got all this gelatin, which gives it mouthfeel, which gives it this like sexy, like, mouth-filling difference, which is from the time I was a kid, it was like when you go and ate restaurant food, it was better than it was, which is different. And it's those kind of things, cooking with the animal fat, using good broth, good stock, that makes the difference in your palate. And then come to find out, flash forward to the paleo world, that's also how food can be the most nutritious as well.
Funny how that works.
I was like, it's kind of like it was supposed to work that way. It's like the Louis C.K. routine. Like, if God ever comes back, he's like, I left food on the ground. I left it on the ground. It was there for you. You didn't need to dig for anything. That's the two things that I stuck to was that, we're going to kind of stick to our guns and teach people like, hey, give it a try. Try beets, try duck, try it. And we'll do our best. We're going to make it taste really good so that there's a good chance that you'd like it. I mean, when we were kids, Brussels sprouts were the worst, right?
Right.
And now every gastropub in the world is like, oh, if you cook them twice with ghee or butter and add some toasted pecans on them.
They're the best, yeah.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And all of your food comes from local sources, correct?
Yes, so it actually was really cool. So when we started in San Diego, I had to go visit the farms and I had to go meet everybody. And, I had never worked in the city at all. And we developed relationships with Susie's Farm. And then we found a rancher that was a couple hours away, Open Spaces Meat. But everything comes from, within a couple 100 miles for the most part. There's might be some spices or something like that are grown like in a hothouse, like in Washington or something like that. And then in Atlanta, that was actually, getting the kitchen open is always hard, getting the permits and everything and getting all the approvals. But as far as the farm and ranch relationships, I had already had that from when I was here before.
Okay.
So it was like I just called up some old buddies and I was like, hey, let's go get a bite to eat. I'm back in town and I need to use your guys' stuff. And the cool thing is Atlanta has had a huge, the restaurant scene has gone just out of control here. And for the better. The food is amazing. The options are so full. So in turn, the farms have gotten much bigger, and they are able to, they've grown organically in both ways, and are able to support the size and volume that we need. And the biggest thing when we were in San Diego is the farms weren't that big. Out here, you can go, yes, it's California, and the Central Coast is, that's where every food for the entire country is grown. But then it's put into a gas truck. It's shipped all over it's not fresh and local just because it happens to be from California.
Right.
So that was another main driver behind whatever you grow for the farms that I could find, I'll make.
Okay.
And so that was the biggest ability to stick to your principles on locality is sticking to the menu principle of if it's around, then we're going to eat it.
Right.
And when you think about it like that, as far as the origins of the paleo diet and all of that stuff, like that's the point. Like forever and as time on end, humans could only eat what was around when it was around. It's a very relatively new concept that in January I can go to Whole Foods and get asparagus from Argentina.
Right.
You
can get vegetables year round and fruits year round, no matter where you are.
And to some degree I understand like that's it can be a good thing, but obviously having more available fresh food and things like that. But I always like give Whole Foods a hard time. It's like people say, oh, it's where you go to get, I think that the illusion of that being like the place to go get healthy stuff. And they do have some local products, but again, like if you go in January, February, if you're in Connecticut, like they have a lot of stuff from Chile and Argentina. And if you think like, okay, that thing got put on a container ship like 5,000 miles from here. Like what's the carbon footprint of one thing of asparagus? Because you won't learn how to eat a rutabaga. And that's what's in season, and citrus and fennel and all the things that are in season.
And this is kind of a great segue into, I know you also have a book called Paleo by Season. That's something, and in that book you kind of give people principles and teach people how to eat what's local and what's fresh. I just for the past year or so, I've started using our local CSA here in Cleveland, and have found it to be really useful for that purpose of getting more variety and eating what's local, and definitely branching out and eating things that I normally wouldn't. But it's still challenging to prepare and like think ahead of time. Okay, what am I going to do with this? Or is it just going to sit in my like right now? I think in my refrigerator I have several vegetables that are about to go bad because I haven't done anything with them yet this week. So I was hoping maybe you could talk about some tips for people who are using maybe a local CSA or trying to eat local, and how you approach that to make sure you get the most out of your food.
Yeah, for sure. So kudos to you for doing the CSA. That is hands down. I talk about it in the book. Like if you want to force yourself to really branch out and to really figure out, what is actually in season, and then also all the different things that you should be eating, the CSA is the way to go. And it also, you're really like buying stock in your local farm because you're guaranteeing them business because you pay up front, so right. Same for me with how I switched the model where like restaurants hope people come in and they have already bought all the food, and I don't buy food until I know how many orders I have. So we're not wasting product.
Right.
It's the same for the farmers. Like they don't have to like hope like, oh, I hope if I plant this food, people will buy it. With CSA, they know that they have that investment already. And so it's a great way for the community to grow, the food community to grow together. Now, in regards to how to actually tackle the CSA once it's in your house, the first thing is, things like greens and stuff like that, like Swiss chard or kale or your lettuce and everything, they need to be washed right away. And I recommend, like, if you have, a wet paper towel or a damp paper towel and wrap them around the greens and to place them in, because your refrigerator is typically a little too cold.
Okay.
For those types of vegetables. A lot of times you'll come back 2 days later and the shard will be all brown and limp. And you think that's because it's like, it wasn't cold enough. And fridge, it was too cold.
Oh, okay.
So if you wrap it in a damp towel and put it in the chiller and actually slide it to the warmest one, you'll get the best amount of time out of the greens. But also those things have a limited shelf life, so you need to kind of focus on cooking those first.
Okay.
The lettuces and stuff like that are going to last the least amount of time. But when things start to go bad, what I always do is either make a soup or make a frittata.
Those are good go-tos.
You can cut up all the vegetables, toss them in olive oil, put a little salt and pepper on them, throw them on a sheet pan and roast them, because they'll last for a week to 10 days in your fridge cooked. And then every time you need some vegetables, like you get home, you've been at work, at school, at the gym, it's 9:30 at night, like you've got maybe 30 minutes until you just fall onto your bed and pass out. If you already have the vegetables cut up, chopped, and roasted, it's pretty easy to cook a piece of meat real quick and warm up the vegetables in the microwave or in a pan and just have a meal ready to go. So the biggest thing is when they are about to go bad, when you like grab that sweet potato and feels kind of soft.
Right.
It's like, oh, this isn't what it's supposed to feel like. Make it happen and just say, okay, I'm going to take an hour. I'm going to peel, chop, roast all these veggies. If you want to make a frittata, like especially when my wife was pregnant, she, waking up in the morning, it was like protein was absolutely necessary, but any meat would just make her, it didn't stay down.
Okay.
So what I did was I would take our CSA supply and I would just roast everything, let it cool in the fridge, whip a bunch of eggs into it, pour that mixture into muffin tins.
Oh yeah, that's good.
You bake it for at 325, 350 until you can stick a knife in it and it comes out clean. And that's it. And they last in the fridge for a week. And she had immediate food whenever she needed it. And then it just became something that we do all the time because, we're still really busy and we still have a hard time, making time for ourselves to cook.
Right.
But if you can grab a one of those egg pucks and it's got vegetables and meat and protein in it and you're ready to go.
So one other question I wanted to ask was for, like you said, when you first started, most people who want to try paleo for the first time, it's a big change and they're trying to go with what's easy and convenient. Most of the time, and I'm guilty of this too, it's like, okay, let's just cook up a bunch of chicken breasts and broccoli and almonds and put them in my Tupperware for the week, and that's what I'm going to eat every single day. Aside from, of course, buying some pre-made meals, what would be your tips for someone who's just starting out with paleo? It maybe has not had any experience cooking, but to try to get at least a little bit of variety as they're starting out. Well,
the biggest thing that I would recommend is you can do what you just said. So you can take a week's worth of chicken breast and roast it off. But instead of saying, okay, now I'm done and I just have roasted chicken breast, some of that chicken breast you can just toss in a little bit of curry powder and olive oil and throw in some golden raisins, and okay, now it's chicken curry salad. You can add roasted garlic and rosemary to other chicken breast. Take some simple flavor profiles that you love. Like when you go to a restaurant, I always get this curry. I always get Penang curry. Okay, well, go buy Penang curry powder and start stocking your pantry with the flavor profiles that you love, that you seek out in restaurants. and then just add this. So when you roast, a week's worth of sweet potatoes, everyone likes roasted sweet potatoes, but again, toss like a little bit of it in. If it's in the winter, you can use like a little bit of sage and like a touch of cinnamon and allspice and nutmeg.
Mm-hmm.
Make it like this savory, sweet kind of, almost, it'll remind you of like, sweet potato souffle that you have at Thanksgiving with like the marshmallows and stuff on top. It doesn't have any of that stuff, but because it has the same flavor profiles, you'll start to really realize like, oh, like I can do this. I think that like just adding like a few decent like spices and spice blends that, just read the back of the thing and read the back of the label, make sure it's not half sugar. And really try to experiment with like the flavors that you like and actually like using them in your home cooking. Okay. And start with what you know, and then try something new every week. Like try a new vegetable, try a new protein.
Okay.
And start with what you know. So if here's how people look at like chicken and they say, oh, well, chicken's all the same. Chefs wouldn't really look at things like that. Like a chicken thigh and a chicken breast are two different animals to us. They cook different, they taste different, they react different. But a pork tenderloin and a chicken breast are essentially the same thing. They're lean meat, they cook fast, they don't have a ton of flavor on their own. You need to add flavor. Whereas a pork butt and a chicken thigh are exactly the same thing. Tons of connective tissue, tons of fat, tons of flavor. They need to be cooked longer. They need, they work really well with braises. So if you know how to make a pulled chipotle chicken, you know how to make a pulled chipotle pork. And if you know how to make a grilled curry chicken salad, you know how to make a grilled pork tenderloin salad. Okay. And so it's how the things cook and what they're actually made up of, which I know is like a little second tier kind of thought process with food. But if you start to think, is this lean meat or is this dark meat? Is this going to cook fast? Is this going to cook quick? Does it have flavor on its own, or do I need to, heavily season? That's where you're going to start to learn. And with vegetables, if you know how to cook kale, then you know how to cook Swiss chard, then you know how to cook mustard greens, then you know how to cook anything that's frilly and green and has a big stem running through the center. You now know how to cook. And with, sweet potatoes, okay, you know how to cook sweet potatoes, then you know how to cook rutabagas, butternut squash, beets, Chioggia beets, golden, all of the starchy vegetables, you now know how to cook. They cook the same. So that's the biggest thing, is you got to start to think like a chef a little bit and think not just, what it is, but what makes it what it is. Like, why are you eating the sweet potato? Well, because I need a starchy, glucose-filled vegetable that isn't, pasta. And, start to think of the other things that are like that, and you'll realize that there's a ton out there that you could be cooking that you probably could figure out if you gave it a try.
That's great advice. So kind of start with what you know, but then think about the family of food that you're cooking and try to branch out, maybe every week trying something new. That's great.
Yeah. Once you make the curry chicken salad, make a pork curry salad, and really like then you start to end up then you turn yourself eventually, and within 2 to 3 months of doing that, you'll be like the Pete's Paleo kitchen, where we don't care what comes in. The chef, our meat purveyor calls and says, I have this venison from Colorado that's this amazing venison from, like, it's a 10,000 acre ranch, and the casino doesn't want it, or the hotel doesn't want it. And we take it.
Yeah.
We'll take it. We know how to make it delicious. Like, venison's lean, strong tasting meat. So we cook it fast. We season it light. We that's it.
Very cool. All right, one more topic I want to cover before I get to my last 3 questions that I ask everyone, and that is bacon. Everyone's favorite paleo food, but it's not always so simple, and a lot of the bacon that you can buy in the store is not actually what you think it is. And I know you have been doing a bacon that is delicious, and I've been enjoying very much, but maybe you could give people a little education on what to look for in their bacon and what is going to make it actually better for you versus something that is not necessarily paleo or healthy.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing, as far as what traditional bacon is in the store, what we, again, when we had the box of Capri Sun, there was the Oscar Mayer bacon next to it.
Yep.
So that meat comes from commodity pigs, which probably live the worst life. I think them and chickens could vie for which of them has it worse in commodity farming, but they don't eat anything good. They get fed a ton of antibiotics.
Which, if you haven't seen Food Inc. yet, definitely recommend anyone listening to watch that movie. That was very eye-opening.
Food Inc. is incredible. If you're a reader, Omnivores Dilemma is...
Yes.
Is Omnivores Dilemma. I read that book right when I was coming into learning about paleo. I was a chef at that point, and it's one of those things in life you look back and you're like, I'm really glad that happened when it happened.
Yeah, that was I actually listened to that one on audiobook, and that was fantastic.
And you're like, oh, we're all corn chips. So the pigs eat nothing but corn and fed antibiotics. And then the actual process of making the bacon, they hang the bacon, they spray it or soak it overnight in sugar and salt water. What that does is it fills the bacon up with water and sugar. So when you buy the bacon, you're paying for half of its water. And then they put it through a machine that sprays a smoke flavoring on it.
Yum.
And then it's sliced, and then it's sold to you as bacon. Actual bacon, which someone like Mr. Benton in Tennessee has made for a long time, is cured for multiple days. Now, what that means is traditionally, like Benton's bacon, they do use sugar in their cure. It's salt and sugar and spices. But sugar isn't necessary for a chemical cure. It's just people have come to like the flavor. So we essentially take the same approach. We have a blend of salt and spices, and then we don't use the pink salt.
Okay.
That's like a chemical that's made and used in commercial cured meats. There's tons of nitrates naturally occurring in celery powder, so we just make that one of the spices that we use. And the combination of the nitrates and the celery powder and the salt sitting on the meat for a few days forms what's called a pellicle, which is a layer of like a film on the skin. And then you smoke it, and now it's actually bacon.
Wow.
We smoke our bacon for about 10 hours, and then it's hung overnight. The entire time that we're curing it, it sits on racks so that any moisture that gets pulled out by the salt falls away. And that is, again, so think of, like I said, they pump their bacon full of water, pull water out of our bacon. So you notice, since you've worked with ours now, how our bacon doesn't like spatter as much as regular bacon.
Right.
It's because when bacon shoots all over the place when you're cooking it, that's water coming out and hitting the fat in the pan, jumping out of the pan.
Okay.
And that's why, every bacon's going to spatter a little bit, but that's why ours is much less dangerous to cook with.
Okay. Another good side effect of having good bacon.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, we get our pork comes from Mennonite farmers who raise the pigs from birth. They don't get shipped off somewhere else for slaughter. They're taken care of. They grow all of the food that they feed the pigs. It's a one-stop shop. So it's like a National Geographic video if you watch the video on where the pork comes from. And the other thing that really bothers me is the illusion of health. I don't know if there's two things that bother me more in the grocery store than fat-free raspberry vinaigrette.
Oh my gosh.
And uncured turkey bacon. The first three ingredients in that raspberry vinaigrette that's fat-free is raspberry puree, cane sugar, and evaporated cane juice, which is three ways of saying sugar.
Sugar.
And if you look at uncured turkey bacon, they still have to use, so they don't use the pink salt. They just use a ton of celery powder as well. But claiming that something's uncured isn't accurate in that case. And it's like preying on people's fears of, cured meat's bad. Well, not necessarily. Like, cured meat was how we survived because we didn't have refrigeration for, till 200 years ago. So, cured meat's been fine for a long time. We have screwed it up. And, that turkey bacon is the worst turkeys, and all the bits of the turkey ground up. They use binders and fillers and coloring, and they spread it out onto a sheet, and then they cut it into bacon-like shapes. And, I'll have the turkey bacon and a Diet Coke, and it's like, it's the illusion of being healthy when, if you just eat real food. I always try to tell people that if they have a bad taste in their mouth about the paleo diet, which can happen. Sure. People get misinformation, or they just listen to their friends or whatever. And they say, isn't that raw diet, or isn't that diet where you just eat bacon? And I like to call it the great grandmother diet. I refer to the test that Michael Pollan actually used in Omnivores Dilemma. Yeah. Like, if your great grandmother looks at it and says, "Oh, that's fennel," or "That's whatever," like, you're probably okay to eat it. Maybe if you're super strict paleo, or if you're training or something like that, like, you wouldn't eat all the things that she would eat. But it's a really good, she wouldn't recognize Go-Gurt, and she wouldn't recognize turkey bacon. Right. She wouldn't recognize, it's really just about getting back to what we've always eaten. So turkey bacon isn't healthy. And real bacon is. And when you're at the grocery store, if you want to get a decent bacon, look for one that doesn't have water added, and look for one that doesn't have sugar. That's hard to do, but they're out there. I think Applegate maybe is. I don't. But maybe I've seen a couple. I think Applegate might actually add a little bit of sugar, but I'm not sure. It's definitely hard to find. That was another big reason to open the Atlanta kitchen, was that, a lot of people they cook their own food, but the bacon is like, okay, I'm not curing and smoking meat. Right. And so being able to have two kitchens that we're producing our bacon out of now, to drop the shipping for people and make it more affordable to have at home, was a big plus. Awesome. All right. I want to end with 3 questions I ask everyone. So the first one is 3 things you do on a regular basis that have the biggest positive impact on your health. I focus on getting a good amount of sleep. Oh, that's good. I focus on a good amount of time every week reading and not watching TV. Awesome. I think not being in front of the screen all the time is very healthy. And I think reading is a way better way for me personally. It could be, and again, I'm a nerd, so I read, The Economist, or like fiction history. So cool. I'm a big nerd. And the third thing is I make sure that I get outside with my daughter every day. Basically since we've had her, she's been amazing. But definitely the training time has all but vanished. on top of moving and doubling the size of my business. Right. But I, like in San Diego, I just every day at 7:00 when she got up, I would let my wife sleep and I would go for an hour walk with her. Oh, awesome. And I try at least like 4 or 5 times a week to just go to the park and run around with her. And again, like, I'm a big Louis C.K. fan. He always talks about like he takes his daughters to the park and he's playing with them. He's running around and playing with, and like all the other parents are just like on their phones. Leave me alone. Go away. Go play. Yeah. So those are the 3 things that I'm doing now that are definitely the best. And sleep is easily the most important. Absolutely. It's so underestimated by a lot of people. Turn the TV off. Like, I remember the first Invictus in San Diego was one of the first gyms that was like nice enough to carry us and really helped us get our start. And CJ Martin, the coach there, did a seminar on health and wellness, and I was there, and he talked about sleep for most of the time.
Wow.
And that always stuck with me, and it's very true. So
that's great. What about, maybe this is for you, the training lately, but one thing that you just can't fit into your schedule or you have a hard time implementing on a regular basis, but you think it would have a big impact on your health?
I think it's definitely the training. You probably wouldn't understand this because you've somehow managed to continue training despite whatever is going.
Sometimes it hasn't always been as consistent as I would like, but
I'm definitely like someone that lives in the extremes. It's just my personality. So when I got into CrossFit, I got into it. I did it every day, and like I said, I started doing the competition training, even though I have no intuition that I'm gonna go down that path. I just liked the intensity of it.
Right.
I liked being in the gym for 2.5 hours. And so now it's about like recognizing, I had some injuries from that time. And I went to an orthopedist 2 weeks ago and basically had him do x-rays on all my shoulders and MRIs and all that stuff. And everything is fine. And he said, are you single? I said, no, I'm married. I have a kid. He goes, so what do you need to be like super ripped for, bro? Like just.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, I understand that that's your business and that you're around those people and everything like that. He said, but a few times a week, like get in the gym, like you can still do CrossFit. You just, you don't have to try to be the strongest guy in the gym. You don't have to RX every workout. Like just go there.
Yeah.
It's just getting in there. So I think, the biggest thing that's holding me back is probably my ego right now as well. Cause it's like, oh, I used to be here.
Right.
I used to be able to do, handstand push-ups. And, when my daughter was born, I remember like walking back and forth on the deck, on my hands, like for something to do as a workout, cause I couldn't leave. And now like the idea of like doing that, I'm like, oh, there's no way. It's way too much. Which in turn makes me not want to get back in because you hate to feel like you're starting over again.
Right.
And so I think the biggest thing for me would be probably making time for it and putting my ego aside and just being content with the fact that I'm getting in the gym and doing something.
Definitely. I think that's the biggest mindset change I've taken, because I know I'm never going to be exactly where I was a couple of years ago, but I've sort of switched my mindset to just be like, okay, just get in the gym and get the work done for an hour, and who cares what your times are, what your scores are. And that's made a big difference for me. Certainly at times it's hard because you're like, oh man, I used to be able to do this or that, but you have to look at it in the big picture, I think.
Well, you always so I remember that there was a video that you did at the university where you did Fran, and they like measured. Oh
yeah.
And you did it in like 2:20 or something. I don't know, whatever crazy time you had. And my Fran time at that, I had just gotten it under 5 minutes. I couldn't use my arms for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like hacking up along, and I was like, so yeah, when I see someone like Josh Bridges like work out, or like when I watched you work out, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm never going to be there. That's not in the cards for me.
Well, that's the beauty of CrossFit, is you can always get better, and there's always going to be people to chase and who are better than you. So it's all about kind of the personal journey.
My brother works out in the gym that Emily Bridgers works out of.
Okay.
And he's a big guy. He's a big, strong Marine, and she just comes in every day and smokes him.
That's awesome. Very cool. All right, last question is, what does a healthy life look like to you?
Healthy life. Focus on your family and taking care of your family, and recognizing that focusing on your family and taking care of your family is taking care of yourself.
I love that.
I was heavily influenced by my grandparents growing up, and none of them are around
Mm.
anymore. And they all smoked and drank and were amazing people that taught me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like I said, taking care of your family is being there for them. And being there for them means you got to take care of yourself.
That is amazing. Perfect note to end on. All right.
At least you have one part of the interview. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed talking to you and can't wait to share this episode.
All right. Well, thank you much as well.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode. I loved getting to know Pete a little bit better, hearing more about his background, and most importantly, getting some great tips for myself to implement so that I can get more out of my meal prep and making sure I'm making the most of what I'm putting in my body. To make sure you never miss an episode in the future and to receive exclusive content from me, head to my website, juliefoucher.com, where you can subscribe to my email list. Also, don't forget to share your stories. I love hearing them, so please let me know if you've used lifestyle to overcome a serious health challenge. You can email me at info@juliefoucher.com, and I'll choose some of these stories to share here on the podcast in future episodes. Also, if you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe and consider giving the podcast a 5-star rating on iTunes. You can train with me at beyondthewhiteboard.com/JulieFoucher. Head there for more details. I also always love hearing your feedback, so please leave comments under this post on my website. You can share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag JFHealth and let me know what you think there. Pete's Paleo is also doing a giveaway contest this week, so make sure you check back to my website as well as my social media accounts for all the details. And thank you again so much for tuning in. I'll catch you next time here on Pursuing Health.